From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang and here are the news. Malacañang said Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is set to certify a proposed measure granting him emergency powers to cut fuel excise taxes. Speaking to reporters, Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro said President Marcos considers the measure's passage timely, especially amid prevailing fuel price concerns. Castro said the Department of Finance or DOF, the Office of the Executive Secretary or OES, and the Office of the President are now coordinating to help expedite the passage of the proposed excise tax cut. She added that once Congress issues a committee report, the President may issue a certification of urgency to speed up the bill's passage.
Yes, of course. Yan po yung nakikita po ng Pangulo. At lalo po at napapanahon ito sa ngayon. Ayon po sa OES, nagtutulungan po ang opisina po ng DOF, OES at ng Office of the President para po mabigyan agad ng oras ang pagsasagawa ng batas patungkol po dito. At kapag po natapos na po at nagkaroon na po ng committee report, ay magkakaroon po ng certification of urgency na siyang ang Pangulo po mismo ang magbibigay.
Bill aims to reduce the excise rates imposed on petroleum products to ease the impact of rising fuel prices. The proposal is seen as among the contingency measures aimed at addressing the rising fuel prices amid escalating crisis in the Middle East. President Marcos assured the public that the planned excise tax cut is just temporary.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said the Philippine government is ready to intervene amid the weakening of the peso. The assurance came after the Philippine peso closed at a record low of 59 pesos and 50 centavos against the US dollar at the end of Monday's trading. Speaking to reporters at Hilton Garden Inn, Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro noted that the peso's decline is partly due to tensions in the Middle East which have affected global financial markets. Castro said the government has been closely coordinating with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas regarding the situation. She said an increase in interest rates may be implemented to stabilize the peso in line with the standard monetary policy measures.
Yes, nakita po natin na ito ay talagang maaari mangyari dahil sa nangyayari po na issue sa Middle East at mukhang ito po talaga ang consequence. At nadinig na rin po natin ang Bangko Sentral patungkol po dito at kung magtutuloy-tuloy po ito ay magkakaroon po talaga ng intervention at yan naman po ay sasang-ayunan din po ng pamahalaan. Sa ating pagkakaalam ay magkakaroon ng increase sa rates sa interest. So yun po ang ating nalalaman.
Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang urged the public to refrain from panic buying despite ongoing tensions in the Middle East, assuring them that supplies of fuel and basic commodities remain sufficient. In a press briefing at Hilton Garden Inn, Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro said government monitoring shows no unusual price movements in essential goods in Metro Manila and other regions. Castro also advised the public to immediately report any abnormal price increases to the DTI and the Department of Energy. She noted that fuel prices are expected to increase starting Tuesday due to global developments, but all firms have committed to implementing the adjustment on a staggered basis. Despite uncertainties caused by continued tensions in the Middle East, Castro said the government is urging the public to prepare but not resort to panic buying. Castro also reiterated the warning against hoarding and profiteering, saying the government will take legal action against violators.
Sa ngayon po, ang sabi naman po, tulad ng ating sinabi kahapon sa DTI, wala naman daw pong movement ng price sa mga basic commodities natin sa NCR at sa ibang mga region. At kung meron po na magkakaroon ng abnormal price increase na hindi naman po nararapat sa ngayon, maaari po nilang agad-agad na ito ay ibigay at ipaalam sa DTI, pati po sa DOE. Sabi po natin, March 10 talaga po magkakaroon ng increase ng presyo sa ating fuel. Asahan po yan. Pero pinangako rin po ni Secretary Garin na staggered basis po ang gagawin ng mga oil companies sa kanila na pag-usapan. So, mahirap po talagang mag-speculate kung anong dapat gawin ng ating mga kababayan dahil sa nangyayari po ngayon. Pero ang nais lamang po ng pamahalaan ay talaga pong ihanda lang kung anong mangyayari sa atin dahil hindi po natin maiiwasan to. Hindi man po ito nagaganap at hindi ito ang kagustuhan ng ating gobyerno. Pero dahil sa tensyon na nagpapatuloy sa Middle East, kailangan po talagang paghandaan ng mga kababayan natin. Pero hindi po kailangan magkaroon ng panic buying dahil kumpleto naman po at enough pa po ang supply, lalo-lalo ng ating fuel at ng ating mga basic commodities. Alam naman po natin na may batas sa mga aksyon ng hoarding, profiteering na inaabuso ang itong klaseng sitwasyon na hindi naman kinakailangan na sila ay magtago o lumaki po ang kanilang kita or tubo dahil hindi pa po ito napapanahon. So, kapag ka po kayo ay nahuli na lumalabag sa batas, nahuli na nag-hoard or umaksyon or gumawa ng isang profiteering, hindi po kayo tatantanan ng ating pamahalaan dahil kayo po mismo ay madidimanda at kakasuhan.
Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. expressed displeasure over the rude behavior of a staff member of the Migrant Workers Office or MWO in Bahrain toward overseas Filipino workers or OFWs. Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro said President Marcos has directed Department of Migrant Workers or DMW Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak to investigate and take action on the incident. Castro said President Marcos would not let the incident involving MWO Bahrain employee Anthony Aliermo slide, especially after the video of the encounter went viral on social media. Castro said President Marcos was displeased after seeing the viral video showing Aliermo's alleged mistreatment of OFWs. She stressed that a public servant should never abuse authority or treat fellow Filipinos with arrogance, adding that those who lack compassion have no place in the administration.
Ang utos ng Pangulo, tulungan lahat ang ating mga kababayan, mga OFWs, lalong-lalo na yung mga naiipit ngayon sa nangyayari sa Middle East. Ang isang public servant ay hindi po dapat na umabuso sa kanilang kapangyarihan. Walang dahilan ang pagyayabang o pagwawalang bahala sa ating mga kababayan. Hindi po pinalagpas ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ang pangyayari sa pagitan ni MWO Bahrain employee Anthony Aliermo at mga overseas Filipino workers doon. Hindi po ito ikinatuwa ng Pangulo. Nagalit siya para sa ating mga OFWs dahil sa pagmamaltrato ng ilang public servant. Noong nakita ng Pangulo ang nag-viral na video na nagpapakita kay Alermo sa hindi magandang pagtrato sa mga OFWs, ay agad niyang inutusan si DMW Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak na mag-imbestiga at umaksyon sa naturang insidente. Sa ngayon ay nirecall na si Alermo sa kanyang home office habang nagpapatuloy ang administrative investigation laban sa kanya. Ang taong walang puso sa pagsisilbi ay walang puwang sa administrasyon ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. Uulitin po natin, ang utos ng Pangulo ay asikasuhin ang lahat ng ating mga kababayan, lalong-lalo na yung mga naiipit sa Middle East. Kung hindi po nyo nais na magsilbi sa ating mga kababayan ng buong puso, kayo na po ang voluntaryong bumitaw sa inyong posisyon.
Secretary Kakdak has already ordered Alermo's recall, and in the viral clip, Alermo was heard telling OFWs who came to seek cash assistance to leave, saying the distribution had already ended and that there were no more available funds. Some OFWs in the video lamented that they had traveled from distant areas to receive the aid and said the MWO should have issued an earlier notice that the distribution had already concluded.
Dateline Malacañang.
In related news, a staff member of the Migrant Workers Office or MWO in Bahrain will face investigation in the country after being recalled by the Department of Migrant Workers or DMW Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak for disrespectfully arguing with some overseas Filipino workers or OFWs in a video that went viral. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has expressed displeasure over the rude behavior of the MWO staff member, directing Kakdak to investigate and take action on the incident. In an interview over Radyo Pilipinas, Kakdak apologized to the OFW community in Bahrain, calling the staff's behavior unacceptable. He said the employee could face penalties if found liable. Kakdak said the incident stemmed from a distribution of financial assistance at the embassy compound to overseas Filipino workers in Bahrain affected by the escalating tension in the Middle East region due to the exchange of attacks between the United States, Israel, and Iran. He said the payout was halted after the crowd grew and began to resemble a public assembly. Kakdak, however, said some groups may have attempted to enter the compound, but instead of calmly addressing the OFWs, the MWO staff used harsh language and told them to complain wherever they wished. To prevent similar incidents, Secretary Kakdak said he has ordered that financial assistance to OFWs in Bahrain be distributed through digital payments. He assured that the department has funds contrary to what the staffer told the OFWs. Secretary Kakdak also clarified that the proposed 7 billion pesos contingency fund he mentioned earlier in a Senate hearing is intended for a possible worst-case scenario involving large-scale repatriation. Meanwhile, Kakdak said the government continues to assist the OFWs affected by the Middle East tension. He said a group of 29 OFWs from Israel and the United Arab Emirates is set to arrive in the country later Tuesday evening after they were safely assisted to cross borders. Secretary Kakdak said another group of 16 OFWs is expected to arrive Wednesday. He also vowed to assist another group of OFWs who were stranded in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, after they were offloaded as their flight was unable to depart due to temporary restrictions.
Dateline Malacañang.
Still from the Department of Migrant Workers, the Department of Migrant Workers or DMW has pledged full support to the family of a Filipino seafarer who was reported missing after their tugboat was struck by a missile in the Strait of Hormuz. In a news release, Migrant Workers Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak said the DMW is already in touch with the seafarer's family. Reports said the missing Filipino seafarer was aboard a UAE-registered tugboat identified as Musafa 2 sent to assist the Malta-flagged container ship Safine Prestige that was stranded near the Strait of Hormuz on March 6 after it was struck by a missile 2 days earlier. The tugboat, identified as Musafa 2, was said to have been hit by at least 2 projectiles, caught fire, and later sank. Secretary Kakdak said the crew members from the distressed vessel were reported safe. However, 1 Filipino crew member from the assisting tugboat was reported missing. The DMW said it has monitored at least 6,400 Filipino seafarers on vessels in the region and marked safe. Secretary Kakdak said the department continues to track ships carrying Filipino crew near the Strait of Hormuz. On Sunday, Secretary Kakdak issued DMW Advisory Number 11 Series of 2026, which aligns with the Warlike Operations Area Committee or WOAC of the International Bargaining Forum, IBF, declaring the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, and Gulf of Oman as warlike operations areas. Under the advisory, the DMW reminds Filipino seafarers of their right to refuse sailing to our areas classified as high-risk and warlike. It also requires ship owner to implement enhanced security measures and provide proper compensation and benefits for crews operating in or affected by conflict conditions. International Maritime Organization Secretary General Arsenio Dominguez earlier expressed alarm about the deadly attack, calling it unacceptable and unsustainable. He said around 20,000 seafarers remain stranded in the Persian Gulf on board ships under heightened risk and considerable mental strain.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang expressed optimism over the Philippines' push to secure a non-permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council or UNSC, stressing that the role carries a responsibility to promote global peace and security. In a press briefing at Hilton Garden Inn, Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said membership in the UNSC would allow the Philippines to contribute its voice to international discussions on peace and security affecting countries around the world. Castro stressed that the role is about representing broader global concerns and not just national interests. If the Philippines secures a seat in the Council, its voice could help contribute to global safety, peace, and security, particularly on issues faced by different countries. Castro acknowledged that the Philippines also has its own security concerns which may naturally come up in discussions. She said the Philippines' participation would not be limited to advancing its own concerns but would aim to serve the broader international community, particularly Asia. The Philippines is actively campaigning for a non-permanent seat on the UNSC for the 2027 to 2028 term.
Ang pagiging miyembro po at mabigyan po ng non-permanent seat sa UN Security Council, hindi po ito ibig sabihin na sariling interes lang ng Pilipinas ang ipaglalaban or madidinig na boses mula sa Pilipinas. Ang sabi nga ito ay, it's not all about us, it's all about everybody. Kung anumang bansa ang may kinakaharap patungkol sa mga peace and security, kailangan lamang pong madinig din ang Pilipinas kapag naging miyembro po tayo ng UN Security Council dahil ang boses na ito ang maaaring makapag-ambag para sa pandaigdigang kaligtasan, kapayapaan at seguridad. Maaari po at since tayo naman po ay mayroon din sariling issue patungkol sa ating kapayapaan at seguridad, hindi maiiwasan na ito ay matalakay. Pero ang Pilipinas po ay hindi lang pang sarili, kundi pang kalahatan. Dahil ito po ay hindi lang pribilehyo, ito ay responsibilidad. Hindi para sa bansa lang, kundi pang sa lahat ng bansa, especially sa Asia.
Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said the Philippines will not rejoin the International Criminal Court for the time being. In a press conference at the Hilton Garden Inn, Communications Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s position on the matter remains unchanged. The Philippines formally withdrew from the ICC on March 17, 2019, exactly a year after the revocation of the Rome Statute. In March 2018, former President Rodrigo Duterte ordered the Philippines' withdrawal from the Rome Statute that created the ICC following a preliminary examination by former prosecutor Fatou Bensouda continued into alleged crimes committed during his bloody drug war. Duterte is currently at the ICC detention center in The Hague, Netherlands. He is facing crimes against humanity allegedly committed due to his drug war carried out between November 1, 2011 and March 16, 2019.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is in good condition and is simply adjusting to the cold weather. The assurance came after some observers noticed President Marcos wiping his nose while delivering his address at the 70th session of the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations headquarters in New York, United States. Castro said the cold weather in the city could naturally cause minor throat or nasal discomfort. She added that she even experienced slight throat irritation due to the weather. She assured the public that the president remains in good condition during his stay. Concerns about President Marcos' health were raised after he was previously diagnosed with diverticulitis, a digestive condition involving inflammation of small pouches in the colon.
Hindi ko po natanong kung siya ay mesipon, pero siguro dahil sa sobrang lamig, baka normal lang. Kahit naman po tayo, ako nga po medyo kumakatikati ang lalamunan, siguro normal lang sa weather. Pero he's okay. He's okay po.
Communications Undersecretary, Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Finally, for Dateline Malacañang, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. announced that American manufacturer U.S. medical glove company USMGC has expressed interest in building a medical glove manufacturing facility in the Philippines. The plan was raised during President Marcos's meeting with the U.S. company on the sidelines of his United Nations UN engagements in New York City Monday, New York time. In a Facebook post, President Marcos said the project would create over 2,000 jobs and pave the way for the local production of essential medical supplies. USMGC is a leading American manufacturer of nitrile and polyisoprene surgical and exam gloves, headquartered in a 1.8 million square facility in Harvard, Illinois. The company has 10 nitrile glove production lines in operation and produces over 2 billion gloves annually. It uses eco-friendly, energy-efficient machines that are 90% lighter than conventional machines and recycles 100% of production water.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that is all for today's Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Bea Gaza-de Guzman.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila. Dateline Malacañang.